I thought I might begin with a story about Marcel Proust, and it was perhaps in 1919, and someone who I think might have been Aldous Huxley took Harold Nicolson to call on Proust. And after the visit, Proust wrote back, "Harold Nicolson is perfectly charming, but don't bring him around again." And I thought that depending on who was here, I would like to, not to translate, but to transliterate this remark, something like this. Colin Rowe is less than charming, and for Christ's sake, don't bring that bastard around these parts anymore. That should be really no trouble, since I don't really propose to return, not imminent and not likely. At my age, as I intimate, I am approaching senility, and in the enfeebled mental condition which is supposed to develop, chains of recollection ensue, and I wouldn't wish to disappoint, and chains of recollection have been forming up. This took place in Lamberville, Pennsylvania, and I went to this bookshop, Jeffrey Steele, with Stephen here and with Michael Graves, and it was very amusing. I mean, Jeffrey Steele's exceptional bookstore, closed now, and where he's gone to live, I don't know. But I didn't buy any books. I just walked around and, oh, look at this now. Now look at that. And in the course of time, Jeffrey Steele had sold something like $4,000 or $5,000 worth of books in about 2 hours to Stephen and to Michael. And it was so completely extraordinary. He was very impressed. He said, why don't you take up book selling, And he took us out to lunch with double martinis and all sorts of things. And indeed, it was very instructive.
So this is why you think I didn't buy the map?
Well, no. You see, he felt that I had made them buy all these books. And, I had to buy something in exchange. Okay. Robert Adam got that dedication for paying Piranesi £100. He wrote home to say that Piranesi was quite cheap, and the person who really wanted the dedication was Lord Charlemont in Dublin, but Lord Charlemont was unwilling to cough up £100. But since we are Scottish and we come from Edinburgh, we have it, and we get it. It's also from the reign of that charming Pope Benedict, whoever it was, Lambertini, whose dates were 1740 to 1758. When he died, Horace Walpole said of him that he was a priest without insolence, a prince without favourites, and a pope without nervures, which I think is a very nice dedication too. But of course the pope was already dead by then. That sort of divertimento, I think, is what you really require. I don't know that I have it. It's the kind of thing that Mozart could whip up in the morning. Instance of people like Mozart is all in it. You say to Mozart, now look, Wolfgang, we want a little divertimento from you this evening, and it's got to be good. And he does it. Whereas, at Princeton, they set a project for building a little building behind the Altes Museum in Berlin, and they take a whole semester over it, and they bring a jury, about 6 people from all over the world, to look at the thing towards Christmas, and there's nothing to look at. Over 12 weeks they haven't been able to do a thing because they've been laboring and agonized, whereas the whole business could in actual fact been done in 10 minutes. Anyway. So I began to drink Snapple. And it's almost exclusively lemon-flavored diet Snapple. And it said on it, it is all natural. But I really doubt this very, very much indeed. Its stimulus is so extreme that I suspect its contents, and I conjecture that not too long it will be before there's an investigation and a scandal. It will be investigated by the Food and Drug Administration with assists from alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Anyway, I am the victim of an iced tea addiction, and I do recommend it to you. It induces the most astonishing lucidity. And if you have to face any charrette or anything of that kind, do take on another Snapple and drink it, because you'll be able to find you can't stop working. There must be something in it, I don't know what it is. I doubt whether there's any hope. You know, there is that story, isn't there, when Ezra Cornell and these people were having, after dinner, they were in a club in New York, and they were saying what they'd do if only they had money. And Ezra said, well, I would found an institution where any man could obtain instruction in any subject. And they said, oh, come on now, Ezra, quit kidding. The place will be overcrowded. He said, but you see the goddamn lousy place where I'm going to put the institution.
And so here we are.
I suppose I shouldn't have come. I said I'd talk about structure and event, whatever that means. Sounds theoretical, which is, to me, slightly appalling. I look at this rush of schools of architecture to set out to teach or give courses in something called theory, and I am, for the most part, appalled, because I think, you know, it will be more Levi-Strauss, not more Levi-Strauss, more Jacques Derrida, and all that sort of thing, you know, a more recondite and ever more recondite, abstruse criticism. I don't see the purpose. Particularly since I relearned today that on the ground floor of this building there is, in terms of public lavatories, if you go into the men's, there is only one, there are two urinals and one thing for the more solid sort of business. Now, since that auditorium, as I know, the last time I talked here, I had over 700 people in that auditorium. I think it's almost impossible, seriously, to talk about architecture in this building when you get such egregious and ridiculous conditions as that. Russell Hitchcock years ago said to me, well, yes, it's French, but it was not intended to be a solid city. It was intended to be a French Baroque sort of hunting forest with all those diagonal allées and rond-points and this and that. And I generally accepted that line, in which, you know, it would be a continuous trees, and there'd be little pavilions, little Ledoux kind of classical pavilions, in which the virtuous senators and representatives and things lived. It requires great courage, energy, strength to ask questions. I have never possessed the art myself. If you want real architectural horror, one of the things to do, is to go to London and move around the city. I mean, it is so incredibly bad what they've done there. Have you done it? The idea that all works of modern architecture were ipso facto going to regenerate society, it's such a funny idea. Obviously, the whole idea of a given building, let's say Alberti Sant'Andrea at Mantua or something like that, is that it is going to elevate and improve the spectator, and it does. But that's a capacity of exceptional building. It's not a capacity of a whole school in general or style in general. Tom Schumacher had a nice quote, I forget where it came from, telling saying, the future is always the same, it's only the past that changes. Which of course is the case, because all the projections that people make of the future are always of the same sort of thing. Whereas everything they say about the past turns it around, turns it upside down, and alters it entirely. The term avant-garde is a French military term, isn't it? Related to rear guard and things of that kind. It's ahead. There can even be, if you look up French, something called the avant-courrier, who is even ahead of the avant-garde. And I suggested to dear Peter that perhaps he should conceive of himself not as avant-garde, but avant-courrier. Peter is determined to believe that throughout history, people have always been conscious of a spirit of the age. It cannot be true. I mean, historical consciousness is a comparatively late development. I mean, surely whole societies fundamentally exist without it. We were talking in the plane, the concept of modernity, whether you are pro-Euro and America or anti-Euro and America, the concept of modernity is essentially a concept of particularly Western culture. It presumes the concept of antiquity. The concept of antiquity is not present, I suppose, in Chinese, Oriental, and whatnot. So it's not necessarily deprivation. It's not. One doesn't have to say architecture is a good thing. One can say architecture is a bad thing or a value-free thing. I would be disposed to say what certain Chinese friends of mine have said to me, that fundamentally the concept of architecture doesn't or didn't really exist in China. That is fundamentally a Euro thing. What does it say? Well, I said, no American architect of his generation has probed deeper into the philosophical roots of historical change.